Shall I share my screen?
Yeah, you can say screen. We can start in a minute or two. So it's like a
Yeah, it's no
6 is
problem.
of time. So it's like after that you can start anytime. Here I go. Oh boy.
So hi team, welcome to Pune User Group. And we have successfully completed 5 user groups till now, and this is our 6th one, nearly completing half an hour. Thanks to my team for such a wonderful journey. And today it's going to be a special session since we have Aleem with us, who is going to drive this meeting. Let me just give it a minute to introduce my team members. So we do have Sumit, Rohit, Nadeem, Riddhi, and Rafiq. So before starting the session, I would like to go through the housekeeping rules. So first thing is, if you haven't still joined us on the Slack, then here is the link. You can go and join us. You'll get a lot of updates on the Slack. And for Q&A, just use our Slack sessions. Anyway, if you have any questions, you can just put it on the chat meeting also. But to have end-to-end answer, if you want it from the Aleem, then you can use a Slack channel. And please keep your lines muted when you are not speaking. And slides and feedback form will be posted on the event page after the session. Okay. So most of you know since Aleem, since he was there in our last 2-3 meetups. But Aleem Cummins is the CTO and founder of Relevance System, and he is also a Splunk Trust member. And I'll say this is an opportunity that we'll learn a lot of things from him, and we'll try to see him again here in these sessions. Shall I stop sharing? Aleem, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, fine. That'd be fantastic. So just bring up my video in full screen when people want to see this, because I'm not actually sharing my desktop. I'm just sharing my video.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I'll crack on then. Good to go? We're all recording?
All good.
Excellent. Well, welcome everybody. Absolute pleasure for me to be here today. We've been planning this particular meetup session for, I don't know, it feels like about 6 weeks now. So I'm really pleased. So, I mean, why am I here today? I've been involved in the Splunk world since, 2012. So I've had rather a varied and interesting Splunk journey. And I thought it might be nice just to sort of share the journey I've had with everybody in terms of the skills I've figured out I've needed to have, the skills I've needed to acquire, and the lessons learned. Because ultimately, I mean, everybody's on their own Splunk journey, okay? And rather than figure everything out for yourself first time round, it would be nice if people who have been here before could maybe share. So obviously, I'm very keen to share what I know, very keen to learn from your good selves as well. So first things first, actually. So just who am I, right? So my name is Aleem Cummins, born in Ireland, so I'm Irish. But we have a map above my head, as you can see. And we have Mumbai, and we have Pune and Sakhrali. So I'm speaking here today for the global audience who aren't in India as well. That I'm speaking for the Pune User Group. But my wife's family are actually from Sakrali. Yeah. So my children are half Indian, half British, and Irish as well. So I feel like I'm part of the team. Absolutely. I've never been to India yet. Closest I came, I think, was Islamabad. But hopefully we'll get to India and we'll get to Pune in person soon. So today I'm going to take you through, the journey I've had, the skills I've had to gain, the lessons I've learned, and my current practitioner mission, and then what's coming next. So there's a couple of cool things coming next, and I've got an announcement in the last slide as well for something I'm going to be creating within the next few months, which is going to be quite good for everybody on this call and beyond. So let me see now. Is everybody familiar with Jay Shetty? Yeah, well, there's no need to talk back. So one thing that's important for me is to do the Splunk journey, but also not do it in a vacuum. We live in the real world, and it's nice to be influenced by people from the real world who can have an impact into our Splunk journeys. So there was this video that Jay did, because he puts out some really good videos on self-improvement and things like that. And he tells the story of John Lennon from the Beatles. That's John Lennon there in Yoko Ono. And when John was in school, the story goes that the teacher asked all of the kids in the classroom, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And all the children wrote down the various things they wanted to be, doctor, fireman, whatever else. And John wrote down something a bit different. He wrote down happy. So when the teacher saw his response, the teacher said to John Lennon, John, I don't think you understood the question. But John's response was very telling. He said, Miss, I don't think you understand life. So ultimately, the reason that we might be on our journeys, we need to be happy. We need to be happy in what we do. So that's kind of where I come from in my Splunk journey. You always want to be happy. You want to be continually improving, and you want to be moving. So let's not lose sight of the fact that absolutely we need to be happy. But whatever happiness is we have to define. However we find it, we have to realize, and however we keep it, we have to keep it. But that's just kind of underpinning some of the values that I have on my Splunk journey and the things I brought into it, because we all bring different aspects of our life into our Splunk journeys. And some of the aspects I bring in are from different places that I might cover to a greater or lesser degree today. Now, this video for me was kind of where it all kind of kicked off. So I got involved in Splunk back in 2012, and we recorded this video when I worked for a company called John Lewis back in 2013. We shot this in Las Vegas, and it took about 8 months for the final cut to be signed off. So for me, this was kind of my license to go for it with Splunk. And it kind of acted as a platform and a springboard to my journey. Now, I don't know what is the springboard for your journeys. I'm not sure where you came from, why you're here. But ultimately, for my story, this was kind of the thing that kicked it off. It finally gave me a platform that I could launch myself. Because since I've been in the Splunk world since 2012, life has been really good. Lots of ups, obviously downs as well, lots of learning lessons. So if you don't mind, actually, I want to play this video. It's only a short video, but it is quite significant to me, and it might actually set the scene for some of the things I'm going to be talking about. So I'm going to do this on Google Chrome, which is kind of cool. I'm going to be casting a video from Google Chrome YouTube to my Google Meet session. So let me see, does this work? If you can't hear it, can somebody please text me?
John Lewis is the leading retailer in the UK. For John Lewis, customer experience isn't just a word, it's a belief, it's what we do. I mean, we've been going for 150 years. What's not changed in that time is our commitment to customer experience. What has changed in that time is the technology and the channels we use, bringing change management to it, bringing governance and bringing ownership. Those things are new. I mean, Splunk is a new area, but with Splunk it touches everything. So when we talk about governance, it's governance over everything. So we might find that typically Splunk might start off with IT operations, but it's more than that. So we use Splunk primarily for johnlewis.com, our website. So all the logs that are generated from our servers are fed into Splunk. And then from there, we can use that for problem solving, our dashboarding, and our operational intelligence. Within weeks of us doing an upgrade to Splunk, we really saw the ROI come back. You know, we had a key issue that Splunk absolutely helped us to identify. You know, it wasn't really a case of finding a needle in a haystack. It was a case of finding a needle in a bunch of needles. And once we solved that, overnight it covered what we had paid for Splunk. So it's a great decision. What Splunk gives us, above other things, it gives us behavioral intelligence. So we were able to infer from what's not in the logs what was happening. So we can see the transaction, we can see the journey the customers were doing, we could see their experience, and we could see that was broken. It was broken abruptly. And once we had that knowledge, we were able to identify it was actually down to a certain build of a certain browser. And then the penny dropped and we were able to recreate the problem. And once we could recreate it, we could easily solve it. But without Splunk, I don't think we could have done it, or it would have taken a lot longer. So finding that needle in a pack of needles is Splunk is just amazing for that. There is a great buzz around Splunk, and you know, if you come to our office, you will feel the enthusiasm. The enthusiasm is fantastic. People are now beginning to dream. You know, when we were kids, we dreamt. When you become adults, you have the fear of failure. With Splunk, it now allows us to dream again. You know, the people who have the expertise can think of new ways. They can imagine how they can make things better, give us more operational intelligence, give us a better experience for our customers.
How is that? Is that okay? We're back on track again. Yep, you can all see me again. The video is gone. Somebody confirm that. Cool. Oh, let me just stop that one. Okay, so we're back on track. That was fine. Could everybody hear that video? Give me a thumbs up or something if you could. Just want to be sure. Never actually shared a video before in Google Chrome. There's a few technical steps to it. So a little bit nerve-wracking. So I'm very pleased that it actually worked. Surprise, surprise. Right, so my journey, I guess, I put it on a little bit of a timeline just to make it, you know, easy to see. So there are kind of the logos of the companies I've worked for or the training companies I've worked with in order to, you know, get some skills. So, I mean, the first thing in my timeline, which is probably the most significant thing, would have been back in, you know, 2007. So that's roughly or exactly when I became a parent. And obviously, we have many journeys and many roles in life, but none is more important than being a parent to your children. So that was kind of an interesting time in my life, which changes your perceptions, your values, how you think, how you act. But then, you know, previous to me doing Splunk, I was a technical programmer, did lots of development. I did lots of websites. I did lots of work for people. But in 2010, the best thing that ever happened to me, I think, was I got made redundant. And the problem we all might face sometimes is that in your current job, you're very important and you're very useful. However, are your skills transferable and are your skills marketable? And unfortunately, I found after being 12 years in that role, my skills weren't really what they needed to be to move on. Now, thankfully, the government had a little bit of a grant and my employer allowed me some training days with somebody else. So I had the good fortune, because some things happen by accident, don't they? And for me, I had the good fortune of having a few days to learn some new techniques on self-improvement, right? So I actually spent 35 days in 2010 studying with Melody and Joe from GWIS Learning here in the UK, and I became a master practitioner of neurolinguistic programming. Now, that's kind of interesting because neurolinguistic programming is the psychology of excellence and the science of change. And ultimately, there are techniques within that realm that translate beautifully to what we do in the Splunk world. And one of those things is emotional intelligence. So you might find sometimes that you're trying to get on with a client, you're trying to get on with your boss or whatever else, but they're not quite on the same page. And one of the lovely things in NLP is with the emotional intelligence, what you can do is figure out the impact of what you say in other people and the impact of how you act to other people. So therefore, you can start to adjust your behavior to ensure that the outcome is what you wanted rather than what you really kind of deserved. So it's really nice that I suppose that accident of being made redundant and doing this training gave me some of the fundamental skills and building blocks I've needed for my particular Splunk journey. And that's kind of where I also came involved with public speaking. So before 2010, the idea of public speaking would be kind of terrifying. I mean, to be fair, it's terrifying to a lot of people, but now it's something I absolutely love to do. And I would advise and encourage anybody to do the same thing, because if you do public speaking, as well as giving back to those who listen, you're also validating your own knowledge, and you're getting the feedback, because ultimately what we know now may not be 100% correct for going forward. So we have to be open-minded in terms of what we do. So there's a few new skills I did pick up before I joined Splunk, and then some of the lessons learned. So definitely learned, right? You've got to believe in yourself, right? You've got to focus on the positives. You've got to be able to anticipate the roadblocks, and you need to be a teacher in life. Now, things happen in ways that we can't anticipate. So if we can kind of be ready for that, we can absolutely help to nail our own journeys. So back in, actually, funnily enough, actually, in the same year, 2010, and that was the year that, you remember that Iceland volcano? It erupted and all of the flights around Europe couldn't happen. I don't know what the name of the volcano was, but I actually met a guy called David Hicks. And David Hicks is one of the most brilliant people in the agile world. And I was given a grant to do some training, but it wasn't very much. And to his absolute credit and my endearing thanks, David said, look, whatever you've given is enough. I won't charge you any more for the training. So I became a certified Scrum Master back in 2010. And the beauty of that is that I learned how to do agile storytelling, agile methodologies, and learning the concept of definition of done. Because all too often, we do our work and we say, yeah, it's done. But yeah, it's done, but I just need to. Whereas actually the definition of done is absolute. So it means that we've reached the final point. So there's some really cool things you can do with agile. So I like, when I'm trying to figure out what my backlog of work is going to be, how to express my work, how to schedule my work, because ultimately we might have work that might be in the backlog. We bring it into getting ready, we bring it into development, we bring it into testing, and then we bring it into delivery. So those agile methodologies are really, really useful. And I was fortunate to actually be exposed to those, but I've used them ever since. So they married themselves really, really well with Splunk. Yeah. So emotional intelligence married itself really well to Splunk. Agile methodologies also married itself really well to Splunk. And I don't know on this call if any of you, you guys are actually using agile methodologies or how you deliver your work. So some good lessons learned there, how to define your work, how to estimate your time. And also, agile is about promoting self-managing teams. So ultimately, I've managed people in the past, and I love it when the team manages itself. That's kind of a core belief. And also, the agile methodologies help you to be outcome driven. So if we have a definition of done, we're not finished until you've reached that. So you're outcome driven, as opposed to, because all too often we're doing brilliant work, but if we're not going to an end that is absolute, we don't know when we've reached it. Yeah. So back in 2010, then I actually joined Tesco. And I guess most people probably know Tesco. They have a big offsite in Bangalore in India. So when I was at Tesco, I didn't do Splunk stuff there at all. I was doing scripting. I was using Microsoft Log Parser. Maybe people here are too young to remember what that actually is. But that's a scripting tool that allows us to take in lots of log files and munch them up and get all sorts of intelligence from that. So that was my introduction, if you will, to doing stuff with data and log parsing. But also at Tesco, I did IT service management. And when I said we don't live in a vacuum, I mean that. Because so ultimately, when we do our Splunk stuff, we have to do that within the realm of the bigger world. So we have to be involved with change management, because ultimately, if we're going to make a change to a Splunk system, we want to make sure we have change control. We have tickets, we have release implementation planning, and we have IT service management to raise tickets, also things like DevOps and stuff like that. So it was kind of useful that the role I did in Tesco wasn't a Splunk type role as such, but it was a building block to the journey I've had. Yeah. And in fact, one thing I did in Tesco, which is quite cool, because I was in the operational world, I actually started doing agile daily stand-ups and scrums every day. And it was the first time that was ever done in Tesco. And it was kind of really strange at first. But when I did it for a while, we had a big board and people would come up to the board and you would ask them, so how is your work going? Do you have any impediments? Things like that. And that was brilliant to get all the people standing up for 15 minutes and helping each other out and feeling where everybody is at and having that sense of joint responsibility. So I don't know if anybody on the call is doing like daily stand-ups, but they are, I promise you, they are really, really useful. And also you learn things like crisis management, because if you have a website that you have and it crashes, well, not the end of the world. But if you've got a website doing £50 million a week, it's crisis. So there was times that things happen and they were dealt with in the right way, but learning that was fantastic. A bit stressful, a bit of growth, but ultimately really good. But one of the lessons I learned there that I would advise for everybody is always improve your alerting after incidents. So if we ever had an incident, it would be like, how could we see that incident happening in the future? So always be sure in the midst of a crisis, you're looking to see, well, what alert could I put in that would maybe avert that crisis as well? That's quite important. And also the importance of documented practices and procedures. It's well and fine having really good practices and procedures, but if they're not documented, they don't really exist, okay? So then in 2012, I actually joined John Lewis, and that's where that video came from that I just showed you. And Tesco had introduced Splunk before I left by several months. So I was able to bring that Splunk into John Lewis. And the beauty there was, it was amazing. I was able to take Splunk with, obviously, the team. We took it from the boiler room to the boardroom. And that was pretty cool, because when you have a long-established company, and John Lewis was 150 years old, the idea of new thinking, obviously you want to improve, but there's a natural resistance to change. So it took a lot of convincing, a lot of research, a lot of collaboration, a lot of influencing to see what we could do with Splunk. So we did it nudge by nudge. But now if you went to John Lewis and you said, look, sorry guys, we need to unplug Splunk, there'd be it wouldn't happen. So the things I was kind of doing there was, I started off as a technical role, but ultimately I did a slight twist away from technical to be their release and implementation manager. So the way we did releases back then was you'd have a lot of people physically come to the building overnight, and we'd all figure out what to do. But the way I wanted to work, so what I did, and I'd encourage people to have a look at this in how they implement Splunk as well, I put the entire implementation planning on Google Sheets. Yeah. So rather than having people come during the evening, everything's on Google Sheets. We validate all the steps. We validate all of the procedures. We have our rollbacks. We have our timings. So maybe I've got 50 people looking at that, validating what we're doing is correct. Because these releases overnight, sometimes, with the best will in the world, things can go wrong. And we had some crisis moments. But because we had very precise implementation planning documents, we knew what we did and we knew when we did it. So ultimately, I find one of the things in Splunk is knowing which command to run on which server and when, and the impact of that command to the configuration files that underpin it, So when I do my Splunk stuff, I like to have, detailed implementation planning that I know, well, this is my understanding. I can validate that plan with peers or friends, and then I can go with that plan. And if something goes slightly astray, I've got my plan and I can roll back and I can take stock and I can learn from it. So that was pretty cool. But ultimately, the art of influencing is quite important, because a lot of people in the call, we come from a technical background, and it's not always the way that people on the technical side might have I mean, the business people, I suppose, are better known for their sort of, people skills, etc. And so we're always at a slight disadvantage, if you will. So being able to influence is quite important. So there's a few skills I'll pick out later on in the talk in the next few slides, but being able to influence people, being able to public speak is quite important, But everybody's on a different journey here. I mean, my journey has gone in different directions, and the current one is going towards the Splunk consultant. But I'll come on to that in a little bit of time. So I spoke at .conf in 2020. No, actually, it was Conf 2013, and that was the first time I was ever in Las Vegas. Absolutely fantastic. And I think I've been to every one since. Obviously, last year's was virtual. And I actually had the pleasure, I think it was in 2015, to speak at .conf with a very close friend of mine, Tony Renke from Nebraska. So we did a talk, and it was all about, I think the name of the talk was Splunk User Groups, more than pints and pizza. So we did our talk, we did all the work. It was in an auditorium in the hotel. I think it could take 500 people. And we showed up and we were pumped, and 12 people arrived. Yeah, 12 people arrived. So the thing was, right, and another tip, the show must go on. And it was recorded. So me and Tony, we absolutely gave it everything we had, our last sinew. And I mean, of the 12 people that were there, if 2 people got a couple of nuggets of what we said, I'm happy. It's all about how many people you can impact rather than how many people attend. So right now, what have we got? Over 20 people. Maybe for 1 or 2 people, there might be something they hear that maybe unlocks an idea, maybe helps them on their journey. And you know what? That's good enough. But I think the lesson I learned, and Tony would testify, is that user groups are tough, okay? It's really important to give back to the community. It's really important to share your knowledge. But, it's a tough thing, So always be sure, if you're ever doing user groups or study groups, that don't do it by yourself. Always have more than one person involved, because I've done, I think I set up the Splunk User Group London in 2013. And since then, we've had, I think, over 1,000 different people attend. Must have run 50 or 60 user groups. Oliver Hopper joined me in 2016 as a co-leader. But, in the first few user groups, I think we had tumbleweed, like in the Westerns, rolling down the halls. So you never know. You might have the greatest talk in the world and nobody attends. Or, although I have found, a little tip, if you're ever running a user group, if you do something on security, it always gets a big audience, So what else? So absolutely, the show must go on. Big lesson. So whatever happens, there's no time for regrets. You got to move forward. But being disruptive, absolutely essential. So, and speaking of that, so back in 2015, I joined Computer Center, right, when I left John Lewis, and that was a big break, because that job was it's a big change, actually. I went from somebody leading Splunk, coaching Splunk, doing implementations, to having a role as a CTO for data analytics, because Computer Center is a multi-billion-dollar company. So that was a big thing. So when you join a new job, you don't necessarily have all the skills, that you'd like to have. So some of the things that I've had to learn, and I'm glad I did, because they stand me in good stead to this day, is organizational transformation, marketing, operating at an executive level, because boy, that's different. You have to be able to do your business planning. You've got to be able to cost things. So if you want to have an endeavor, you've got to do all the figures first. So I think sometimes as your career develops, you have to have different skill sets, and some things you prefer more than others. But ultimately, every job has skills that you have to, develop into. But there are a few things, I think, that no matter what job you have, no matter what role you have, there's some constants, yeah? And one of those is collaboration. Now, I've always been a good collaborator. I hope people can testify in the call. But ultimately, if you're a good collaborator, I think that's going to be a great sign for success. Because if you collaborate genuinely with people, you can do something called fail fast. You can realize at an early time that this isn't quite working and make adjustments, right? But if you're not collaborating, sometimes you might let it fester. And all of a sudden, for you to make the adjustment, too much time has passed. So the best time and the most inexpensive time to make corrections is early on. And that's why you hear the term fail fast. That has come from Agile as well. So that's quite important. So failing fast, I don't like the word fail as such, because you're learning and you're developing, but ultimately fail fast is quite important. So then there was, we covered off 2015. I think Tony Renke might actually be on that call. And I think his ears will be glowing later on in this talk as well. So in 2016, it was kind of interesting. We in Computer Center had the good fortune to be, obviously a good team there. We got World Splunk Partner of the Year and EMEA Splunk Partner of the Year. And I was in Las Vegas, and I went up on stage and I spoke to 600 of the global partners. And it's a bit terrifying going up on stage, but it's really cool as well. So I thought to myself, what's the best way to do this? So I don't know if anybody watches WWE, but Edge I really love. So I went up on stage to Edge's music, and we had a bit of a pizzazz up there. It was wonderful. In fact, I had everybody, 600 people in a room, standing up, holding hands, saying, "Splunk, I'm all in." So everybody got quite excited, and we made it go forward. You can do those kind of things in America. If we did those in the UK, I'm not sure how they're going to work out. And actually, just before that event, I actually met Doug Merritt for the first time. I remember I met Doug, obviously the CEO of Splunk, back in 2015 in London. And when you saw Doug, you knew, well, absolutely CEO. He's going to be CEO. But I had the honor and privilege to present to the guy for about 90 minutes, and he took it all in, and he's totally amazing. And then Godfrey Sullivan, the CEO before Doug, was in the same office at the same time, and he brought me into one of his meetings, and we went through some cool stuff and what we could do for community and stuff like that. So I really love how Splunk are very good at engaging with their community and the help that they give the community. It's just totally amazing. I've never seen it in any other company, and I'm not sure we will. Other people will try to sort of copy that, but they got it absolutely right. And I was very lucky as well then in 2015 to be inducted into Splunk Trust. Now, Splunk Trust is a group of, I think we started off, there may have been 18 of us, and now it's 66. So the idea there is that the Splunk Trust people, we can't claim to be the greatest people in the world, but we can claim to be the most helpful people in the room. So we tend to give our heart and soul on user groups, speaking, coaching, helping people. I do a lot of pro bono work and advice, always free. And Tony obviously runs B-Sides as well. So Splunk Trust is, that's where the Fez is, in case anybody hadn't guessed that. So Splunk Trust is a great place to be in terms of us giving us a platform to do more. We want to do as much as we can for the community. We want to help people in their journeys. We want to help people get along. But ultimately, it's amazing that Splunk have allowed us this platform to help us to do more. And one of the fruits of this platform, you're going to see, I believe it's on May 3rd and 4th this year, when Splunk B-Sides takes flight. And I'll speak about that in a second. And if Tony's on the call, I might actually invite him to say a couple of words as well. And one thing I always do as well is that every time I was traveling, if I was ever going somewhere, I'd always stop off at the local user group. So when I went to Splunk Trust Summit back in 2016, I stopped off in New York on the way, and we gave a talk to the Splunk User Group New York. So there's lots and lots of user groups now. So if anybody's going on holidays, it's always worth seeing, is there a local user group, and just, showing up. And there's lots of virtual user groups as well. So it's not a bad thing for your learning to always see, what user groups are there, go attend. Because I guess it's nice that it's great to feel part of the Splunk community, but it's also lovely when you get that knowledge as well. Because these sessions, there's some nuggets in there. I've learned some of the best things in my career from ad lib side comments in user groups that just all of a sudden made sense. So sometimes we can be stuck in a rut, and you never know where that might get opened up. So by all means, it's a very rich and safe environment to go. And by the way, just speaking of user groups, I always believe, by the way, that user groups, you should never have any type of selling or hiring, okay? So in this talk, if I talk about things you could do, I would never encourage anybody to leave their career. What I'm trying to say is be the best you in what you do. So just bear that in mind. Now, in 2018, actually, I actually did some, because in I think it was 2017, I became a Splunk instructor. And, one of the best ways to actually, I think, to learn Splunk is to teach it, okay? So I know there's people on the call that do user groups and they do study groups and stuff like that. But, teaching Splunk was, I think, one of the most enjoyable things I've ever done. Because I now see people to this day that I taught when they were learning, and they're now highly qualified consultants and things like that. So it's lovely to see the fruits of your work come out the other side. It's just the best thing in the world. So definitely learning and teaching, they're two sides of the same coin. And funnily enough, I had not been to India yet, but actually I had the opportunity in 2018 to go to Islamabad. And I went there and I did some teaching on Splunk for one of the telcos. And we had a week in Islamabad. And to be able to teach there was absolutely fantastic. And I was lucky because when I decided, as I'm in Pakistan, I might as well do a public talk. So I did this talk. I think it took like 3 or 4 hours. And we had people fly in on airplanes and cars and stuff like that. So I was stunned that in Pakistan, or any other country actually, that the level of commitment, the level of energy, the level of excitement to learn Splunk was absolutely, right there. So I was delighted. So never miss an opportunity to give a talk, because whatever you give, it comes back, and it's really, really good. So I don't want to dwell too much, because I'm really keen to sort of give some tips as well. But it's very important, I believe, to be able to bring in some of the skill sets you have from the other places in your life and some of the other previous jobs you might have had, because Splunk is a big world now, okay? There's lots of positions into it. People are coming from a technical perspective. Like recently, I've been more coming at Splunk from a not 100% hands-on perspective. So you've got to be able to be the storyteller, to be able to engage with people, to bring them on board to get things done. So, I think when I'm done in a few minutes here, we can have a quick Q&A as well, because I'm really keen to learn, look, what have you guys done in terms of your journey? What have the sort of pitfalls been, and what have the sort of successes been? Because, we all have different levels of success in what we do. Okay, so that's kind of a bit of a short run through the kind of journey I've had. And of course, I think the current mission I'm on right now, and I'll touch on that in a couple of slides, is the consultant. And believe me, that is incredibly rewarding, but incredibly difficult, But I'm so pleased. And ultimately, I think for me, I think I can be more useful, and I can't speak for everybody, if you have a really good technical practitioner knowledge of Splunk, but you also have kind of the implementation expertise, you have the governance expertise, because you can kind of draw the full picture. So I felt really missing the fact that I had let the hands-on slip a little bit. So for the last several months, you wouldn't believe how much time I've spent rectifying that and getting it all up to speed. But I realize as well that, some people who want to do their training, they're not always going to have the funding to do it. So some of the things I'm going to be doing in the next few months is going to help people who don't have the funding to do some of the Splunk training that they like to do. So I'm putting a few things together I'll speak to in a couple of moments. But I think also, it's interesting, I say, to bring the knowledge you have from other domains into what you're doing. So one thing I put together to help people get on that journey with their organizations for data and Splunk, I put together something called the Data Value Framework back, I think it was 2017, or it could have been 2019, I'm not entirely sure, but a few years ago. I mean, the idea there was to go into somebody and an organization and explain, look, this is what we mean when we talk about data. So rather than going in there, because sometimes I found the best way to tell people about Splunk is not to use the actual word Splunk, because sometimes, because the name of the product is Splunk, the name of the company is Splunk, people can misconstrue and misunderstand what you're trying to say. So I thought, let's bring it back to ultimately what you want to achieve. So I came up with this thing called the Data Value Framework. So that's kind of my calling card, my scratch card, if you will, to help to explain what I mean when I talk about data, to help to explain what I mean when I talk about business outcomes and business value and organizational adoption. So what I wanted to do here, and there's a video for this as well, I mean, it's worth listening to because ultimately it just might give you some ideas. So what I wanted to do was break down, if you will, the stages of people not really utilizing their data within their organization to people absolutely rocking with their data. Because where do you start? What do you do? Can you do things in parallel? Do you have to go all in, or can you do it step by step? So I kind of broke it down, if you will, to kind of the key constituents I would see. And this, I talk about journeys a lot, okay? So this kind of graph here is kind of the journey that an organization might take. And these are the kind of things that they might have to consider. And for those things they might have to consider, the rewards of that consideration is the outcomes. Because ultimately, I'm looking at the use case section here. You know, what do I need to engage a Splunk consultant? What do I need to start my work? Ideally, I'd have some kind of a prioritized backlog, okay? So I can say, well, today I'm doing item A. Tomorrow I'm doing item B. Everybody knows what you're doing. The whole thing is manageable. It's auditable, and we can kind of build professional development into it. So if you want to do use cases, run some workshops. How do you run workshops? How do you get validation and verification of your use case? And a lot of this, I think, also boils down to what I said earlier, because if your use case isn't exactly what it needs to be from different perspectives, maybe it won't get business prioritization sign-off, maybe it won't get the funding, you're allowed to fail fast. But the point is, if I've gone through the methodology of getting my use cases nailed, it means the reward should be a prioritized backlog. I'm moving forward. I'm not moving back. So I'm not going to go through the rest, of course not. Watch the video, please. But ultimately, let's have a look at the key constituents that would be an organization succeeding in Splunk. And by the same token, from your personal perspective, you might have a similar graph as to what do you need to do? What do you need to be to attain your goals? So up the top here, maybe you want to be a certified consultant. So what kind of things do you have to learn? Yeah, there is an awful lot of things to learn. So if you were to have a look at my particular journey at the moment, which is to get core consultant certified, it's really hard. But I've kind of broken it down, if you will. These are the kind of stages I'm going through. So some of these are 3-day courses, 5-day courses. And it's tough, okay? I won't lie. But inside of all of my folders, I put all of my practice material. I put all of my educational material. And I go through that. So a good friend of mine, Suman from Bits.io, told me, look, absolutely practice everything. You practice. Because you'd be amazed, after all these years I've been doing Splunk, that you go through an entire lab getting it as good as you possibly think, and you've made a slight blip. Yeah. But the beauty of that is that you're learning. And because, I mean, my recommendation is to use implementation sheets to make sure you're following the stages. You learn from that. So if you're ever doing a lab, whether it's education or work, and you feel uncomfortable, that's because you're learning. Yeah. If you weren't learning, you're probably all chilled out. So I've taken on the core consultant. I don't know, am I crazy? Maybe I am. But ultimately, for me, it was something I felt was missing. And as I'm going through this, I'm documenting everything. So I'm going to be giving further talks and study group sessions and stuff like that to help people through their journeys. Yeah, because ultimately, you know, it's the same kind of journey to get to consultant. So I'm more than happy to help coach, mentor anybody who wants to follow on this journey. And speaking of that, actually, just to summarize, if you will. So in terms of my Splunk journey, and some of these things may resonate with you guys as well. So the kind of skills that I've had to pick up, and I'm not claiming to be, you know, any good or anything like that. I'm just saying for me, the kind of skills, qualities, and values that I've had to sort of get on board to have my journey go the way I wanted it to go is here. I mean, first things first, you need to be a really good storyteller. Otherwise, people are not going to necessarily engage with you. You know, you want to know your stuff. You want to be a strong practitioner. But ultimately, you need to be able to draw that picture, tell that story, be engaging, be entertaining, not funny, but kind of be entertaining in the sense that you want to sort of inspire people. But Splunk, I said many times, is not in a vacuum. So you're going to have an understanding at least of IT service management, data governance, some ethics, release implementation, documentation. There's a lot of things that if you can at least have an understanding of, it's going to help you in engaging with other people. I'm not saying that you have to be an expert in emotional intelligence or data governance, but have a 101 type understanding of what these things mean. Yeah, because ultimately that's going to help you to engage with people. It's going to help you collaborate with people. Hopefully it's going to get you to your definition of dones, and it's going to get you to a place where your journey is where you'd like it to be. But also I'd recommend, if you can, that one thing I really love to do is the pro bono work. So I advise companies. Thankfully, at this stage in my career, I'm kind of known for whatever reason as an influencer. Okay, but I take that very seriously. So companies do come to me, organizations, and they want advice, they want help. It's always 100% free. Okay, absolutely pro bono. But I love to do that because if you're helping organizations maybe on the early stages, it's really fantastic, you know. And ultimately, you are sort of, if you're giving people advice, you're reinforcing what you know. And by helping different companies, you're kind of assimilating some of the knowledge that you're having in those collaborations. So doing pro bono work, absolutely love it to pieces, but it's also beneficial for your own understanding and your own knowledge as well. And please practice. Yeah, do lots of research. Now, in terms of the tips that I've kind of done, people who know me will know that I tend to take on stuff that you believe you can do. If you only took on work that you know you can do, how are you going to grow? Yeah, you have to have that ability that you can actually extend what you know to get to the next level. So when I'm doing consultant, and there might be people on this call doing architect or consultant or enterprise security implementer, you know, you don't know you're going to get there when you start. You have to have that belief. But what helps you in that belief, what helps you in that journey, is definitely you being involved in user groups, the community. And one thing I'd recommend is you have some practice clubs. Yeah. And I'll talk about practice clubs just in a second as well. But this is kind of my, if you will, top 15 list of tips. And I'll send out the slides as well. This is my top 10, 20 list of things that, for me, are the tips I've learned. Yeah. And in my instance, these have been very useful. I can't claim how useful they may be to your good selves, but ultimately, you know, in my journey, these things were quite influential. They were quite important, and I've now reached the stage where my next step into consultancy is underpinned by the journey I've had. Yeah, so maybe I could have done consultancy many years ago, but you know, you are who you are, and everybody's in a different place. But ultimately, make sure you're documenting your lessons learned. Yeah, so you can go forward and not make the same mistakes sort of twice. Now, B-Sides is an initiative kind of spearheaded by Tony Reinke. He's an absolute hero of mine in the Splunk community. So B-Sides is kind of done by Splunk Trust, and the idea that it is talks from the community for the community. Now, these are happening on May the 3rd and 4th. And Tony, I don't know if you're on the call, but feel free to come in here now if you like. So there's going to be quite a lot of talks on there. Oh, Tony's there. Hello, Tony.
How we doing?
Hey, we're doing awesome. Lovely to see you. Tell us about B-Sides, Tony.
So B-Sides started with a bunch of us highly technical folks that were going to conf and realizing we were spending more time in the hallway and in the community lounge answering and helping people because these sessions were more marketing based and not technical. So when some of our friends that put in really technical talks didn't get their talks accepted, so we got a little hurt. And so we just decided we're going to take over a corner of conf and we're going to run technical talks. And since then it's grown to our last year. Doug even promoted us on the keynote. So this year we didn't want to burn everybody out with Zoom with being with conf again. So we switched it to the other side of the calendar. So we're now halfway between the conf schedule. And we have over 20 speakers this year over those 2 days that will be giving some really good talks. Some of the details are just starting to come out now with who's speaking, so it's going to be lovely.
Yeah, that's awesome, Tony. But just for everybody's knowledge, Tony runs the Splunk User Group in Nebraska and absolutely lives and dies for the community. So I'm really pleased that Tony is on a talk here, that we're talking about the community. We're talking about people's individual journeys, because Tony has definitely been an inspiration for me for the last several years. You know, because sometimes running user groups can be tough, yeah. But when you have your peers around you, it's a much better place. And the camaraderie that you get from the community is just inspiring and uplifting and energizing. So one of my advice tips, please get involved in the community. So I'm lucky this year we put forward a talk, actually, myself and Suman from the Splunk User Group in Fort Worth. We're doing a talk that we thought might be useful for those on a Splunk journey who maybe want to learn all about Splunk and deploying Splunk and playing with Splunk, but they don't have the funding maybe to do formal education and formal training. So the session that we're going to do is all about how you can use AWS and actually the free tier of AWS to spin up Splunk instances. So we're going to, in our talk, we're going to go through the implementation plan of, hey, we're going to go build a Splunk environment. Then we're going to turn it in to be using clustering. Yeah. Then maybe if we have time, we'll onboard some data. But to save money, we'll actually implement some Lambda scripts. And I got this idea from Michael Bentley. We're going to use some Lambda scripts to stop and start your Splunk instances, so we can call them up maybe when you have a user group or a study class, do your thing together collaboratively, and then pull it down when you finish. So for me, on my journey that I've had to architect, I've had to do these things to get the certification. So what we're now doing is we're putting it out there, is that these are the kind of things that you might want to do. Because Suman is an exceptional practitioner. I think he was US PS Partner of the Year last year. So he knows his stuff extremely well. So I'm really pleased that we get that opportunity to sort of demonstrate in the flesh, look, this is the way that we would build indexers. This is the way that we would build Splunk infrastructure. And these are the gotchas to look out for. These are the tests to show you that what you did was correct. And by the way, if we run this command, hey, look what it did to this conf file. So that's going to be quite an interesting talk. There's a lot of work we have to do to make it happen. But I'm really pleased. I'm so pleased that talk got accepted, because I think it's going to benefit people on their journeys. And actually writing the material for the talk benefits me. So I think that's going to be cool. And what we can do actually after B-Sides, when we have that material, we can start to extend it. Because one of the things I want to do, actually, I'll save that for the last slide. But one thing I want to stress here, right, is that when we have a strong community, that really inspires us to move forward. It gives us the energy that we don't have. And Splunk is about much more than our job. It's about the family we have at home, how we can have a good, happy life at home, how we can come into work, because the most important thing to bring to work is yourself, okay? So it's really important that us in the community, we have a good time on our Splunk journey, but let's make sure we have a good time at home. So I have a video here I want to show that is a demonstration of one of my SplunkTrust colleagues who is showing how to walk the walk and talk the talk in terms of having a good time doing the Splunk stuff as a professional, but also how that relates to the family. And I think we're going to recognize the person in this talk as well. And if you bear with me, I'm just going to play that. It's a short clip, but ultimately I think it will help to sort of hopefully inspire people on the call to move forward. So let me just play this clip into the video. And
growing up in Nebraska is really like growing up with family. Everybody in the entire state typically looks out for each other. Down there, they're just working on their quickness of their feet. Down there, they're working on their conditioning and their core strength. I love to see my son active and involved in football. The growth of the person within football, your struggles, your challenges, and your successes. So I'm really happy that he gets to go through that. When does competition start this year? having 3 kids is definitely a challenge. You no longer are playing man-to-man or 2-on-1. You now have to go to a zone type of parenting system. My wife and I, sometimes it gets a little crazy. We have to go from different sports to different activities. My family inspires me the most to do what I do and be the best that I can be. If Splunk was a superhero, it'd definitely be Superman. Analyze faster than a speeding bullet, data more powerful than a locomotive, X-rays to see the query and the results faster than anybody can think of. I am the corporate security engineer, and I am the Splunk architect for NRC Health. When I was first getting involved in the user group, I was talking with a former Splunk employee at the time, and we were joking around on ways to grow my user group. And he said, you should get a license plate. I do have Splunk on my license plate. I am the Splunk face for Nebraska. It's more than just professional. We get to know each other on a personal level. We are there for each other. We help each other. We push each other. We're there for their joys, for weddings, for divorces, when there's tough times. We're going to have Special Agent Jeremy here talk on FBI and security. There is a small number of people that have the cape, so it's pretty special. Splunk brings a lot of value to NRC Health. This would be connecting on the secure site. We're able to look at the data and be able to know what's going on as it's going on to help mitigate problems before they become critical problems. Splunk is definitely revolutionary in being able to not only know what's going on with your organization, but being able to move forward from reactive to proactive.
Right, excellent. I thought it was definitely worth playing that clip, and I don't mean to embarrass Tony, but that was totally awesome. Yeah, it's kind of videos like that that kind of inspires me to move forward, and I'm really pleased that Tony did that, because ultimately many of us are families, and it's important that we do the right thing either side of our working hours. Now, just the final thing I wanted to say is that one initiative I'm going to announce just now is in the next several months I'm going to be putting together a Splunk study group, and we'll have a website for that as well. And the thinking there is that if we have, and it's geared at people who literally, look, I want to learn Splunk, I don't have the funding from employers to go do the formal education, how can I learn it, right? And we have user groups, and user groups are totally brilliant. But what I wanted to do with the Splunk study group was we have a few people on a call, we have a problem that we want to deal with, and maybe we can deal with it by spinning up an AWS environment. That is the talk myself and Suman are doing at B-Sides, but it's just a space where we can come and we can spin up a Splunk environment and we can go through problems together. And depending on who's on the call, one person could lead it. They say, look, I'm trying to learn about search head clustering, I don't understand it, this is how I do it, it's not working. So we kind of have maybe small groups of people together from different places, different levels of experience and expertise, just getting together to try to help each other to move on. So it's kind of when I was a kid, we had these study groups as well. So it's kind of my way of trying to formulate some of that. And I don't know how good it's going to be, how successful it's going to be, but I think if we can have some Splunk study groups, we can spin them up whenever we want, as often as we want, and we can just help people to get along, okay? So I'd probably be asking for feedback on Splunk study group and things like that as we go along, but it's totally community, it's totally free, yeah? It's just something I'll probably even ask Tony for his help. I'm sure he'll say yes before I've asked him, but it's just something I want to do to kind of, give back as much as we possibly can, because I'm happy if the Splunk community are happier and more knowledgeable and can do more. That's really what I want. It makes me sleep very soundly and very sweetly in the evenings. So that's kind of what I wanted to cover today, a bit of a whistle stop of kind of the journey I've had. And I didn't mean to hark on about the things I've done, but what I want to get to really is is, look, I've had some skills I think might be useful. I've had some tips I want to share. These are the kind of things I'd like to do in the future. It's not about me whatsoever. It's about the community. So hopefully that was beneficial. So I'm going to open the floor now. I apologize. We've gone a little bit over time, but let's open the floor, hand it back to the co-leaders. And if anybody has any questions, if anybody has any comments, I would certainly love to hear them. Do you want to take the floor, Gauri?
Yeah. So guys, if you have any question, please feel free to ask it right now, because we will be winding up the session in next 5 minutes. And by the way, Tony, I'll be also going to speak at Besides Splunk.
It's going to be awesome.
Certainly, yeah. Can I ask a question then? So if we did have kind of Splunk study groups, right, would people be keen to hop on a call with 4, 5, 6 people and just shoot the breeze about what an individual wanted to learn? Does that seem like a good idea?
Yeah, it's been.
Most certainly does, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how we're going to do it, right? I just know the intention is there to, because, I realized, and forgive me, like, not everybody has the benefit of having employers who can afford to pay for training. And maybe you're learning Splunk, but it's not your main job, it's your side job. So how are you going to get funding? So I just want to find a happy medium for people to be able to progress in a safe environment, where there's no money involved. You don't have to pay for anything. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So watch this space. I'm kind of speaking early. I'm kind of speaking and talking at the same time. But I just think it makes sense, because now that I'm on my highly technical journey, certain things are jumping off the page for me that hitherto I haven't had to give full attention to, So there's a few trials and tribulations I'm certainly going through. So I want to help to make that journey a little bit softer for everybody else. I can send out the slides if that's useful. I can happily do any follow-up talks or individual one-to-ones. Totally about pro bono here as well. So if I can help anybody, please, I'm the same for Tony and the same for the co-leaders. We're all here for each other, yeah. So please reach out if you need to.
Thanks a lot, Aleem. It was a nice session, and really we appreciate the efforts, and we really appreciate the experience you are carrying. And it's actually a nice platform that you are creating to make everybody go through the different learnings. And doing it at zero cost is altogether, next level of thinking. That's what I think experience teaches.
I mean, I just think about the rewards people get. I mean, if it costs something, I'll happily pay. I don't care. It's all about, I wish I had this when I was trying to learn Splunk. It would be far easier. You can learn 24/7. It's a tough thing. Everybody's in different situations and different scenarios, and it's unfair if there's a unlevel playing field. I think we don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
So big up the community, one family.
Yeah. Thanks, Aleem. So I can see a question from Varun. So he's talking about I wanted to know how we can show Office Splunk as better solution as compared to ILK, which is Splunk competitor.
So I think what you're referring to there is something called competitive intelligence. Now, there's a chap who works in Splunk, a very nice English guy. He's in California. His name is Ian Duncan. Now, Ian is the director of competitive intelligence. So you can actually seek out Ian, who can give you the latest hot off the press information. Yeah, because he is the source. I've used Ian and collaborated with Ian in the past. He's a great guy. So he'll be able to tell you the ins and the outs. However, obviously there's going to be community people who have done ELK stuff and they've done Splunk stuff, and they can tell you from their experience. But products change, don't they? So it's not as simple as, well, one is better than the other or one is cheaper than the other. It's a moving feast, and it all depends on what you need to do and where you'd like to be going forward and what skill sets you require to make it happen. So I don't think there's like a black and white answer to that one, but Ian Duncan is definitely a person to seek out.
I'm going to agree with Aleem. Ian's great. I just recently, I switched companies since that video, and when I came into the company, it had an Elk stack, and I just have moved to Splunk Cloud. One of the big factors for me was Elk is schema on write, where Splunk is schema on read. So if you don't put the data in exactly how Elk wants it, it doesn't go in. Whereas Splunk, you can do the regex parsing and everything after the data is already in the indexer. So for me, there was going to be too much, I don't know what I'm missing, for me to not switch over.
Yeah, that's the key thing. Yeah. That was one of those.
Yeah, plus we have some compression issues, like in Splunk we have facility of compression. So Splunk do the compression things, like if we have a 10 GB of data and we have a good type of data, then it's like, let's say compression ratio in Splunk is 0.5. So it will compress your data, 10 GB of data to half. But in case of Elk, you have to carry whole 10 GB of data. So it's like a lot of benefits if we talk about the Splunk and Elk. So it's like, again, like Tony said, free is not always free. It's like after you will build your infra and all these things, you will get to know like how things work in Elk and Splunk. But as per my experience working in both, Splunk is better product compared to Elk. I'm not just supporting like we are in a Splunk user group meet, but it's like as per professional experience also.
Yeah, but I think having like I love the idea of having a battle card in your pocket, because you might be going out there and you're doing good Splunk work, but people are skeptical of what you're saying. They say, no, it's Elk is the best. It's nice to have like a battle card in your pocket so you can help defend yourself, because that's what you're going to have in the real world when you're trying to influence people. People will say, well, it's too expensive. It's not that simple. You need to have some facts and figures. So maybe it's not a bad idea if we had some battle cards, if you will, just to help us to defend ourselves when we're trying to, go out there in the real world, evangelize, educate, whatever it might be. Because what we wouldn't want to do is somebody decides, no, we're not interested in Splunk, but that's because I was unable to make the case. Yeah. So for me to make the case, I kind of need to know in the real world, where does Elk fit in? Where does Cribble fit in? Where does Datadog fit in? You kind of have to know where they fit in, because it wouldn't be right for you to say, well, absolutely, Splunk is the best thing ever in every scenario. You've got to have opinions that are backed up by evidence and data. Yeah.
So further, Warren saying like if we have 30 TB daily consumptions license, what would you say, Elk or Splunk? So from the licensing prospect, as per my experience, like it's up to your organization, like how you are going to deal with Splunk. So because they have a lot of benefits, like they have a lot of offers which they give you based on your data volume and capacity. So you have to deal with Splunk. So it's up to your sales team, how well they are managing this Splunk.
It's tough, because you might have, let's say you have a 2-year plan, right? And the 2-year plan is to fully do a digital transformation in your organization, okay? A 2-year plan is lovely. I've got capital revenue, capital expenses to do that. Lovely. Everybody's happy. But maybe in the real world, I remember I was at John Lewis, and every time I wanted to get money to extend the Splunk license, you had to try your best to get it was like nudge. You get a little bit more money. If I was trying to say, well, actually, do you know what? Can I have all the money I need to do what we want to do in the next 2 years? It's hard for that to happen. We can do business value assessments, but how do you do that organizationally wide? It can be tough. So when you're doing things department by department, person by person, I understand where Elk might be very attractive, because you can kind of do it as a shadow bit of IT. You can do it self-contained, but ultimately, if you want to grow organizationally, if you have top buy-in, it's easier for that journey to happen. But if it's going to be sporadic, it's harder to make the case for one technology over the other. That's why people talk about total cost of ownership over 3 years to do the sums. But how the hell is that going to get me money today for a license to do something? Yeah. So you have to always relate total cost of ownership to what is it I need to say to my organization to make them get on the starting block. You know, it can be hard to get on the starting block, irrespective of what technology you use, because the problem you have sometimes with Splunk is that there's all of these things that have hitherto been under the table, projects that didn't complete, technical debt. I bring in Splunk and all of a sudden there's alerts everywhere because all the stuff that was already broken is now visibly broken. And we're causing hassle for everybody. So, you know, always be careful when you're using any product. But Splunk tells the truth, yeah, and sometimes that can be hard.
And at 30 terabytes a day, a lot of what I have to look at is data retention. How long are you going to keep that 30 terabytes? How are you going to keep the 30 terabytes? Are you doing data redundancy, clustering, and look at it at the architectural level to understand what is required from both Splunk and Elk to be able to do that. You may have the ability to do all that storage, but the replication and how do you get that data in? Do you need a front end loader like Cribble or DSP? You know, on the Elk stack, you know, how are you going to handle that? You know, write performance and search performance. Again, since it is doing schema on write, you have to have the upfront CPU in the Elk stack to be able to handle that. And if you do, great, your search performance is going to be great afterwards. So there's a lot of architectural things to look at the 30 terabyte level to not just be able to give you an answer real quick.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Brilliant. Yeah, super. Anything else from anybody? Yeah, Tony's answers are much better than mine. Much better.
Yep. Thanks, Aleem. It's a very good initiative you are taking, like for Splunk User Group. So I can see there is comments from Janjal and other people. Like if you want, so you can join Splunk Pune User Group. You can directly reach out to Aleem. So he's in a LinkedIn, so you can find him easily. So it's like any help, anything related to Splunk, you can reach out to any Splunk User Group. So everyone is very helping and very caring. So it's my personal experience. I'm also going through a lot of people. I'm also meeting with a lot of people in Splunk user groups. So they are really helping with the content they provide and all these things. You can go to Splunk Trust. You can have a look. Like there are a lot of things. So Tony also had like a Slack channel, so you can join that channel, and there are a lot of question answers. If you have any doubts and all these things, you can ask everything over there.
Yeah, and just the final thing is, I'm going to a little plug actually, because I'm doing a user group between London and Fort Worth in April and May on the Kubernetes operator for Splunk. Yeah, so that's going to happen with Maddie Modestina. Yeah, in end of April and in May, and there's lots of education between the two on Slack. So that's going to be quite cool, because I know that Matt spoke at your user group, I think in the last couple of months. And since then, the operator is going towards general availability. So watch out for that too. That's why it's wonderful. We have all these global user groups. I mean, there's one on, I think, in New York tonight. I think Suman has one on in Fort Worth later on today as well. So come on, they're there to be had. Just, you know, it's wonderful.
Correct. If anyone have missed that Kubernetes user group meet, so you can go to our channel and you can have a look over there. It's very nice talk. So it's like Betty already provided some labs. You can go through the labs and you can implement. So it's like a beginner level. We have last meeting was beginner level. So we are going to host an advanced level also in upcoming months and all these things. But if you are interested in a Kubernetes operator and all these things, so you can go. You can have a look in the video, and you can learn. It's like there is a link set for the labs also.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Well, listen, guys, thanks so much for the opportunity to speak today. It was an absolute honor and privilege.
It's an honor, Aleem, it's to be onboarded into Splunk Pune User Group. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks much, Aleem and Tony. Thanks to all of the users for joining. And if anyone is interested in speaking in next session, please reach out to us. And till then, take care. Bye bye. Stay safe and happy splunking.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right.
Thank you.